After initially being told that their requests were outside the city's jurisdiction, a small group of concerned Port Moody residents and members of Force of Nature Alliance were invited back to Port Moody City Hall on January 23rd, where they were given the opportunity to convince Council that their concerns should be heard. Tri-Cities Community TV was there and brings you this coverage.
Today, as a first step towards asking Port Moody to sue Big Oil, I want to thank Mark Norbury from Legato C for starting this campaign, and everybody who's come tonight. At first we were denied a delegation because the city said that it wasn't within their jurisdiction to sue Big Oil to recover the costs that they will be incurring and already have incurred because of climate change. We know that oil companies have known for a long time that what they're doing is causing harm and that there is a way to transition off of oil. But they want to stop it because oil is a good way to make money. And they're making lots of money. But we're paying. And the people that come after us will pay too. And they need to pay their fair share. And the city is fully within their rights. And I'm instructed that in the province of British Columbia, they're able to launch court cases against international companies to recover costs incurred by the actions of those companies. So this is something that's within their jurisdiction. Tonight, we're asking the City Council of Port Moody to recognize that it's within their jurisdiction and to accept our delegation, the delegation from Sue Big Oil. So we're going to go in tonight. If you're a resident of Port Moody, please consider speaking and speak politely and respectfully to the Mayor and Council because we're asking them nicely to accept our delegation. Thank you.
Exxon, Shell, pollute our air. Let's make oil companies pay their share.
Exxon, Shell, pollute our air.
Let's make oil companies pay their shares.
Exxon, Shell,
Pollute our air.
let's make oil companies pay their share.
Before the council doors opened, we had an opportunity to speak with some of the organizers of the campaign.
Hi, my name is Mark Norbury. I'm a resident of Port Moody and I'm involved in the local environmental group called the Legato C Circle. And I've been involved in the Super Goal campaign for about a year now. The campaign is basically to do with divesting from fossil fuels. Because as we know, climate change is upon us. It's a very serious issue. Many people are dying because of it. Thousands of people every year die from climate change related issues like vector-borne diseases and so on. And many, even local events are happening. We have wildfires, we're having flooding, and many other events. So it's really a way to take action because one of the big issues at the moment is that we're continuing to burn fossil fuels. And so we really want to divest away from that. And this is a very powerful way to do that because it's using the legal system. It's the provincial legal system. So we are encouraging cities and municipalities across the province of British Columbia to join in with the class action lawsuit, which is basically to sue Big Oil so that they pay their fair share towards the harm that they have done through the selling of their products and also through the misinformation that they've been providing to the public at large for the last several decades.
Well, the Sue Big Oil campaign is a movement of ordinary British Columbians who are concerned about the costs of climate change facing their communities, and they're calling on local governments to join together to file a class action lawsuit to make the world's largest oil companies pay for a fair share of the cost of climate impacts in BC communities. Because BC communities are struggling under the cost of climate change, things like sea level rise, floods from extreme storms and atmospheric rivers, heat domes, forest fire management, and so the communities, the local governments cannot afford all these costs. So they're asking for the world's largest oil companies to pay their fair share because these companies are most responsible for causing climate change. They knew for decades about the harm that was being caused. They spread misinformation and undermined the climate science and blocked climate policies, and therefore we think they should pay a fair share of the costs facing BC communities. You could go to our website at www.subigoil.ca, and if you want to support our campaign, you can sign the Sue Big Oil Declaration. That means that your voice is counted. So far, we have 10,000 British Columbians who've signed, and yeah, that would be great.
Council will not be debating or providing comments during this portion of the agenda. With respect to item 12.2, Council will be discussing whether or not to permit the delegation to proceed at the February 13th regular Council meeting. Again, the topic before Council this evening is whether or not the topic be scheduled as a delegation for a future meeting and not to consider the topic itself at this time. Having said that, interpreting that, when we get to item 12.2, if Council moves ahead with approving a delegation for our next regular Council meeting, that will be time to debate the issues surrounding Sue Big Oil. Tonight is just, it's a policy. The City has a policy in regards to non-jurisdictional issues, so we need the Council vote to get that on a future agenda. So, public input, I'm going to start with the list of people that are in the audience here. And Ms. Lamb, our city clerk, will be helping facilitate participation of people online. The first speaker I have up is Mark Norbury. Yeah. And Mr. Norbury, you have 2 minutes.
Good evening, Acting Mayor Dilworth, councillors and members of the public. As stated in the request, currently taxpayers are expected to foot the bill for 100% of the costs associated with climate change, with its adaptation and preparedness. And these costs are set to rise annually as climate-related events occur with greater frequency each year. This relates to issues described in our city's climate action plan, which is obviously jurisdictional. So then is this delegation request. According to this plan, the costs are likely to be anywhere from $1 million up to $8 million. Where will the city get this additional revenue from? Our city's budget is already strained as it is. When I informed Councillor Agtrap about the Sue Big Oil campaign, she very kindly emailed me back and told me about Resolution 654 made at the council meeting of 9th of April 2019, requesting the provincial government to take legal action against fossil fuel companies. As far as I can see, if that was jurisdictional and it was discussed at provincial level action, then Sue Big Oil, which is at the city level, is certainly jurisdictional, because the Sue Big Oil campaign concerns city costs, including emergency services, damage to roads and other public property, rising insurance premiums, and so on. Furthermore, Andrew Gage, a professional lawyer and expert in this area, has in his email to city staff provided a valid proof of how it is jurisdictional. No valid proof whatsoever by anyone has been provided to us on how it might be non-jurisdictional. Therefore, logic dictates, as far as I can see, that it must in fact be jurisdictional, and as far as I can see, it would be irrational to believe otherwise. When I received the response from city staff to our delegation request that they thought it was non-jurisdictional, I was a little shocked, because these are matters of utmost importance, and they are most definitely jurisdictional. Thank you for listening.
Look at that, 2 minutes on the dot. Sorry, Mr. Norbury, I forgot to ask for the record your name and city of residence.
Yes, Mark Norbury, and I live in Port Moody.
Great, thank you. Person number 2 on my list is Justin Arsenault. Justin, just as a reminder, the first thing we like to hear is who you are and where you live.
Right, hello, Acting Mayor Dilworth and City Council. My name is Justin Arsenault, and I am a resident of Port Moody.
You have 2 minutes.
Right, I would like to speak today in support of the proposal that the Sue Big Oil delegation be allowed to make a presentation to Council at a future meeting. I understand there may be a variety of opinions on Council about the delegation itself, but regardless of how you feel about the delegation, I do think that it's important that you at least hear us out. The decision by the city to block the delegation on the basis of it being non-jurisdictional, I think, was a mistake. The proposal that the delegation wants to bring forward has to do with the city taking action on a matter related to city infrastructure, city funding, and the city's environment. So I think it is very much within the city's jurisdiction. Given that, regardless of whether or not you think that you would support the proposal if we were to bring it forward, I think that it is your responsibility as a council to listen to us as residents when we want to bring forward an idea. I think that this is really foundational to the democratic process in this city. And what we were discussing today, of course, is not the merits of the delegation itself, but really about whether or not residents are going to be able to fully exercise those democratic rights in the city to make a proposal. And so given that, I hope that the council can support the motion for the delegation to go forward in a future meeting, so that at that point we can make our case and we can have a proper discussion about that issue and then figure out whether or not Subig Oil is a good action for the city to take. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Mr. Person. We have someone online. Yes, we have Mr. Andrew Gage. Andrew Gage, and how do I make Mr. Gage appear on the screen? Mr. Gage, you've joined us.
Yes, can you hear me?
We can hear you. You have 2 minutes.
Hello, Mayor and Council. I'm Andrew Gage, the staff lawyer at West Coast in environmental law and a resident of this county. The purpose of the City Will campaign is about a class action law, proper cost of actually experiencing community. In the United States, there's over 2 dozen local governments bringing similar lawsuits. Here in Canada, 28 law professors recommended local governments bringing similar on litigation against big tobacco. And the municipalities of Gibson's, Blue Royal, and Squamish have pledged to work towards the lawsuit, while several BC communities have constructed staff to examine its merits. None of the local governments we've engaged with before yours has suggested that they don't have jurisdiction. So Port Moody's ruling that it was not jurisdiction was a considered surprise. We've asked by email 3 separate occasions for clarification on why we have jurisdiction, and we haven't yet received a reply to that question. You have a duty to hear from your constituents. Your policy says that an issue is non-jurisdiction only where when council do not have the legal, financial, geographic, or operational data. You clearly can have an effect in all of these areas. You have financial and legal jurisdiction because Port Moody is already spending millions of dollars to protect their infrastructure for residents from undertaking. Under the community charter, you have the powers of an active person to bring a court case against those that are causing financial harm. This includes prosecuting police. You have geographic jurisdiction because the harm takes up in your Port Moody. And operation jurisdiction because it's affecting your operations as a city. It's understandable that you may have questions about how this piece will work, but I urge you not to prejudge local jurisdiction. Instead, hear from the delegation and ask those questions. You can request a copy of the legal opinion that already.
Mr. Gage, your 2 minutes is up. Could I ask you to wrap up in about 10 seconds, please?
Sure. I encourage you to be curious here to find out why employers and other local governments are saying to join this fight and to vote to hear from the City Oil delegation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gage. Here in the audience,
my name is Benjamin Perry. I'm a resident of Coquitlam. I'm here to speak on the Subig Oil delegation. I'm also representing Force of Nature Alliance. I just wanted to thank Council for giving a second opportunity to consider the delegation. I understand it's kind of an unprecedented request for the City of Port Moody. We all use oil and gas every day in our lives, and they're an important part of our economy as well. Unfortunately, oil and gas companies are incapable of doing the responsible thing and reducing their production and helping us to transition off fossil fuels because they're tasked with making profits, and that's what their job is. The job of governments is to provide a counterbalance to that, and I think a part of that is why the City of Port Moody has jurisdiction on this issue in order to protect the people from the costs incurred by the oil company's activities, and that we all participate in as well. So thank you again for reconsidering the delegation request.
thank you. Is anyone in the audience or watching online as part of the webinar that would like to speak to Council as part of public input? For a third and final time, I'm asking if there are members online or in the audience that would like to speak as part of public input. We are moving on to item 12.2, request to place a non-jurisdictional delegation item on an upcoming agenda. There were two options in front of us, and I had spoken to this earlier. Again, I know that council has heard the information that we are debating the issue of adding this as a future delegation. We're not debating the merits of Sue Big Oil. Councillor Lubrecki, I have you up first.
Thank you. Yeah, no, a lot more to say than that. So I first want to talk about what it is we're debating tonight, which is, Acting Mayor just said, which is if council will allow the delegation to be presented to us on Sue Big Oil. What is Sue Big Oil? As we've heard, is a movement towards a class action lawsuit targeting the world's major fossil fuel companies so that municipalities can recoup a fair share of climate-related costs. And you need not look beyond our own climate action plan budget, as was mentioned during public input, that is going to be in the millions of dollars over the next decade to know that climate costs are real and our residents are the one on the hook paying for these costs that have resulted from the burning of fossil fuels. But tonight, we are not debating how we feel about that. We're considering whether or not to even hear from this delegation. And I have to disagree completely on the notion that this is a non-jurisdictional issue per subjective interpretation of city policy. An interpretation I believe was reviewed by the mayor, and she's not here to have her explain her interpretation of this. Our policy defines non-jurisdictional as issues, quote, issues over which council does not have legal, financial, geographic, or operational effect. How is a group seeking a decision that only council can make non-jurisdictional? The issue the delegation wants to ask us about is if our city will or will not join a class action lawsuit alongside other municipalities. That is the question the group wants to ask us, and we're the only ones who can answer. That is the question the group has asked many other municipalities, and from my understanding, we're the only city who has refused to hear this delegation. And we know that this is a jurisdictional issue for local governments because our other councils have signed on to this already. And we are not living in a different legal reality than other local governments. But the key point here is this group includes our residents. As we've heard today, it represents the views of so many more in our community. We've received many emails as well. Our entire job as a council is to hear from people, not preventing them from speaking to us, especially on critical issues like climate change. Who are we to block an important conversation to our community from happening? And any past conversations at this council table on topics related to this are a great background, but irrelevant to today in a heat dome, cataclysmic flood, and wildfire era that we now find ourselves in that is different than even a few years ago. And it has to be said, the irony of spending 5 minutes each debating if we will hear a five-minute delegation is not lost on me. I really think we need to reconsider our policy. But again, tonight we're not debating the issue of Sue Big Oil. To my colleagues, your opinion on this, it just doesn't matter tonight. It's irrelevant. What does matter tonight is what your opinion is on democracy and the importance of hearing from our residents. You can or cannot support the delegation, but let's hear the group out. So I really hope that my colleagues can join me in voting yes. Let this delegation speak. Thank you.
We know that it's something that's important to our constituents and deserves to be heard. And as Mr. Arsenault said, hearing from our citizens is part of the democratic process. We do hear non-jurisdictional items all the time. I've personally heard from childcare organizations on $10 a day, which we all support. We've heard, I've actually been part myself of delegations on pharmacare, which we all support. And we have been in the past in favor of taking things to UBCM and FCM when they aren't in our jurisdiction on behalf of our residents. But this is jurisdiction. We are specifically being asked to take part in a municipal case that 3 local governments have already signed on to. As was mentioned, others are considering it, and there are many, although I know it's different in the states, there are many local governments in the states as well as the states themselves that are starting to take these initiatives on because it's costing the city so much to deal with the impacts on our citizens and our infrastructure, as well as our services like fire, due to these climate catastrophes. Port Moody has a history of supporting climate justice. This is very much climate justice, and climate-related costs are definitely part of that. So I think it's
presented a background brief with every point of contact that council members have had with the Force of Nature and its colleagues in their Sue Big Oil campaign. And we've heard twice and responded twice to requests. So I'm very supportive of hearing what the delegation is asking for and what they have to say this third time that they've come to Port Moody City Council. So I'll absolutely be supportive of hearing from the delegation. All in favor? That is carried unanimously. Thank you, Council.
The Soo Big Oil delegation will be making its presentation to Port Moody City Council on February 13th at 7:30 p.m. If you support making big oil companies accountable for their actions, come out and show your support.